Hi everybody, Carol Garrison here with Carol's Creative Escape. Sorry, I'm moving around here just a little bit, still trying to get myself situated. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm so thrilled that you're here. I'm a little bit crooked on my camera, it looks like. There we go. It is Monday, August 19th, 2024, and my name is Carol Garrison. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And today I'm really happy. Hi, Kim. Thanks for tuning in. I'm really excited to be sharing with you the card that I'm making tonight. And as I was scrolling through different things, trying to figure out what I was going to do, this image popped up actually with ocean scene, including sea turtles and things like that. And I discovered it was a quilt pattern. And so I did a little tweaking and I've created this layer of cards that's going to be a quilt pattern. And I will be the first to tell you it's a little bit putsy, but I think you're going to like the results. Tonight I'm doing it with the Simply Zinnia Designer Series paper. I haven't even stamped any words or images on it. And so that is what we're going to work with tonight. I need to step away real quick and grab one thing so we can quilt it. I forgot to have it over here by my work desk, but that's a really quick change, easy to make. And I think you're going to like it. I've got lots of measurements. I apologize. There's a lot of cutting. And some of those measurements are dealing with those 1/8" measurement pieces. So, we're just going to see where it goes. But I do hope that you're going to like this card. Definitely not one I'm going to recommend for making multiples of. But if you've got a friend who's a quilter, I really think they're going to appreciate the steps that you took to create this card as well. So one of the things I like to do with my stamping is spread joy one card at a time. That's kind of my motto or my whatever with making cards. And that spreading the joy can either be by sending somebody a card or helping show somebody how to make cards that they can then send to somebody. A lot of times our artistic things get stifled just a little bit by people around us, intentionally or unintentionally. And so I want to help people find that inner creativity so that you too can start making cards. So let's go ahead. I do want to give one more commercial too for Stampin' Up! Here. I try not to do a lot of that in my videos, but I do want to let you know that they do have select designer series paper on sale right now. So if that is something that you're looking for, by all means, head out to either your demonstrator site, or if you don't have one, you're welcome to look at mine as well. And then if you did make purchases in the month of July and you earn those bonus coupons, you want to make sure that you spend those in August so that you have you can get a greater discount on that paper by using those coupons, and I'd hate for anybody to let those go to waste. So without further ado, I am going to flip my camera around and get it set up on my other camera stand. Hopefully this time with no cords in the way, but I can't guarantee that. It looks like maybe I've got just a teeny bit, but I can fix that. The camera stand seems to be sinking just a little bit. I thought I had it tightened up, but when it sinks, it does make things get just a little bit closer. So let's see if we can make this work. I think it'll work. I honestly haven't even put together a finished card yet doing this. And so, it looks like my voice is showing up on my iPad. I like to use my iPad because it helps me see what I'm doing and making sure I'm staying centered, but I don't want you hearing it in the process. So we're going to try to get rid of the glare on here. This is the template that I created to make this card, so you can see all the different quilt panels and things like that. So I am going to give you the measurements as we go, but I'm going to also give you a second here. Hopefully you can get a picture. I'm going to try to turn my camera off so there's not quite as much glare on it, or not my camera, but my light. I'm hoping that you are able to see these measurements and can take a quick screenshot and maybe just enlarge it as we go. I think this will make a lot more sense to you as I get going on here, but this seemed to be the easiest way to share these measurements. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing, this is kind of my pile. So there is a lot of paper, but it's okay. The first thing you need is a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5, and it should be scored at 4 1/4. And I just realized I did not score this. Okay, and I want to just make sure. My apologies, it sounds like the dog is barking upstairs. That didn't quite look like 5.5 to me. Okay, so your first measurement is a piece of cardstock that's 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. The next layer is going to be a piece of designer series paper that's just 1/8 of an inch difference in dimensions, which means it's 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And then you're going to have another layer of cardstock, and this layer is 5 by 3 3/4 with another piece of designer series paper. And I'm going to recommend that this piece be not quite as busy because it's going to allow all the quilted pieces to pop a little bit. My first attempt at doing this, I had way too busy a piece. So this measures 4 3/4 by 3.5. And then here's where all the fun comes in. You need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 3/4 by 3/4. 2 pieces of cardstock that measures 3/4 by 7/8. 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 3/4 by 1 5/8. And 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 3/4 by 2 1/4. This is actually a great way to get rid of some of those smaller pieces of cardstock that you might have sitting around. And last but not least, you're going to have a piece of cardstock that measures 1 1/2 by 2 5/8. And then of course we're going to have to layer all of these pieces. So we're going to have a designer series paper that measures 1 3/8 by 2 1/2. And this piece is kind of the focal point or the center of your quilt. So just keep that in mind. You'll have 2 pieces of designer series paper that measure 5/8 by 5/8. And so that'll go with these 2 squares. You will have 2 pieces of cardstock or designer series paper that measures 5/8 by 3/4. So now you can start seeing the layers, I think, pop up just a little bit. You'll have 2 pieces of designer series paper that measures 5/8 by 1 1/2. And last but not least, you'll have 2 pieces of designer series paper that measures 3/4 by 2 or excuse me, 3/4, I'm right. Nope. 5/8 by 2 1/8. So all of the designer series paper is 5/8 as the width, and all of these cardstock layers are 3/4, and then you just have to have the other pieces. So we're just going to start assembling our card here. And the first thing that we're going to do is we'll go ahead and fold this and get a nice burnished score line here, and we are going to use our adhesive to attach this card, or the designer series paper rather, to our cardstock. And just be aware, if you have an up-down pattern, that you're sure that you're laying it on in the correct direction. And this card, although mine is going to be made this direction, it is going to be good either way that you're going based on the papers I chose today. Now we can just set that piece aside. And then we are going to take this layer of designer series paper and attach it to this layer of cardstock. And you might be wondering, why am I not layering this up as I go, you know, building my layers? And there's a reason for that, which you will see. Get that as centered as I would have liked. So hopefully, yes. Okay, try to get that back down there. All right. And then we will, oops. Well, see, that's what happens when you peel your paper up. It doesn't always stay as sticky as you like. So we're going to just add a little bit more adhesive here and we'll hold it down. All right. And then we're going to set that aside, and I am going to recommend that you use your silicone mat or other surface that you work on to attach the layers to our cardstock, because we got lots of small pieces. And so the center one is easy because it's the largest piece. And again, just watch if you have up-down directions to your pattern, that you're putting it on and cutting it correctly for that. This goes like that. And then we'll add these two pieces. And again, what's nice about this card is, even though it is a little bit of cutting ahead of time, it's a great way to use some of those little scraps of designer series paper that you may have stockpiled as well. Okay, so we've got those two, and you know, match your colors. It's a quilt, so quilts do have different patterns. You know, it doesn't have to be all the same tone. You can add little pops of color. It gives some depth to the quilt. This is my kind of quilting. I have made a couple quilts in my life, and I did actually sew a quilted tote bag. But I prefer doing paper quilts, I think, to some of the sewing. I do have one more set of quilt pieces to make. But I don't know, I'm afraid to start it, so we'll see when that's going to happen. Okay. And so really what we're doing is layering. So you can tell, you know, there's a little bit of prep work, and that's why I said this isn't a card I'd want to mass produce. But honestly, once you start getting your layers in here, it goes pretty fast. It really does. I think there's lots of people out walking in my neighborhood tonight. The dog is upstairs, but I can hear him going just a little bit crazy. All right. Now, normally this would really bother me, but because of a final step that I'm going to take with this card, I'm not too concerned about how it's adhering, because I think it's going to get pressed down pretty good. And most of this is going to be covered, so we don't have to worry about that. All right, so this next step, what I recommend is that you lay your pieces out before you start adhering them, just so that you have a good idea for placement. And so this is how it's going to go. And you just want even borders and spacing between each of the pieces. And so let's start. getting our pieces adhered. And this is one, if you're like to use the liquid glue, I think this card would be a great one to use liquid glue on, just to help give you the ability to move stuff around a little bit better than the adhesive does. It still works okay as long as you grab it right away. But I think the glue gives you a little bit more leeway in trying to shift stuff around. So the pattern that I found, the quilt pattern that I found, is actually, it had sea turtles in the middle of it. And so the first paper that I thought of, I'm going to try doing the corner pieces, was a couple years ago. We had some designer paper with sea turtles, and there was a sea turtle stamp set. I'm guessing some of you might remember that. And so when I get done here, I am going to assemble that one as well. It is all retired designer series paper, but maybe it'll help you see where my inspiration came from. And I'm actually kind of pleased that I was able to figure out measurements and get it translated into a whole different design. That's not usually a direction that I take when I am making my cards. So some days we surprise ourselves with where we head off in our cards and the things we can create. So I did receive my pre-order. One of the perks of being a demonstrator is we do get to pre-order items ahead of time from catalogs. And the new September to early January catalog is coming out, and I got my pre-order. I actually participated in a box party last week with my upline person, Susan Campfield, where we showed off all of a bunch of different goodies that me and 3 other demonstrators, including Susan, purchased. And wow, there's some really neat stuff. I inadvertently thought I was ordering a suite, and it ended up being just a bundle that I ordered. And so I'm waiting for the rest of that order to come in, because I had to place a second order to make sure I could get all of that. So one of the things that I'm doing is, before I adhere this piece, I want to quilt it. And so we've got this awesome 3D embossing folder, and I neglected to look up the name, but that's all right, because I have my catalog right here. Page 129 in the annual catalog. This just looked like a great quilting pattern that I could use, and it is the Dashing Designs 3D embossing folder. So let's go ahead and we'll put this layer into the embossing folder, and I will make my sandwich. I've got my base tray, and then because I'm using with 3D embossing folders, the only other thing I need is this layer, number 4, and that'll give me the bulk and the thickness that I need to emboss this card. So I'm just gonna crank it through, and it is a little thick because I do have a couple layers of cardstock in there, but we're getting it through. And there we go. Now it's quilted. Isn't that kind of cool? It just looks like there's a fancy stitch pattern in there. All right, so to finish the card off, we are just going to take our adhesive and go like this. And now we have our quilted card. So not only is it a patchwork quilt like this, but we've added lines and some texture to it so that it looks like this has actually been quilted as well with the sewing machine. So there you go. That is my Simply Zinnia quilted card front. And inside I will come up with a sentiment. I kind of hate to cover up the front of this, so I might even just leave it blank and stamp up the inside of my card a little bit, whoops, with the sentiment, and we'll go from there. So that is this card. If you want to stick around, feel free, because now I did pull out that retired paper, and I'm going to real quick create the sea turtle one, which really was the source of my inspiration. But please keep in mind the paper I'm showing you is retired cardstock, or is retired designer series paper. So it's not something you're going to be able to buy. But I really did want to kind of show where the inspiration came from, and because I do like all these ocean type themed papers, I kind of wanted to make the card. All right, so we've got our card front done. We will add, oh, I guess I already put that down. Now we're just going to layer all of our card scraps. And you know, it was a lot easier once I had to figure out all these measurements, and once I had them written down, it was easy to make. So one tip that I'll give you for cutting your strips is, like on that cardstock, cut your strip of paper 3/4 of an inch, and have a length of that measures 3/4 of an inch, and then you will be able to, oh, I ran out of adhesive. Then you will be able to, maybe I can get enough out of here, quickly cut your pieces, because you're really only measuring the width of it once and then just cutting the lengths. And that did speed the process up for me a lot this time through. So just something to keep in mind. And this is one where I did bring in some colors just because I wanted to get those little fish in there. And these are going to run this way. So here I did have a lot of patterns that ran different directions. And so I did have to be careful as I was making my cuts and kind of know ahead of time where I wanted to place them, because direction was going to impact how I cut it. So hopefully that makes sense. So we've got our little turtles here. And these pieces, I'm actually going to do 2 different colors for those little squares. And the reason for that is they go next to the fish, and I wanted to get a little pop of color in for each of these as well. And so the little square was the easiest way for me to do that. So you can see, again, the assembly part is very, very quick on this card. And if you do that little trick of cutting the strips 3/4 of an inch on the cardstock, 5/8 of an inch on the designer series paper, and then just cut the lengths that you need, that really speeds your cutting up a lot. All right, so again, for placement, whoops, I'm just gonna lay this out, and we're gonna put this piece here with the orange, and then this piece will go up here, and I'll use the yellow, and then we'll have this and this and this and that, and we can start putting this layer together. I'd like to think I would be brave enough to put that centerpiece in first. I'm not. I'll be honest with you on that one. And I thought even if you didn't want to run it through an embossing folder, but you wanted a little detail, you could pop up that centerpiece on dimensions, and maybe it could be a puffy part of a quilt. I'm sure there's a better term than puffy part of a quilt, but you know, it could be just a piece of the quilt that got stuffed with something, and it would raise, and that would just give a little bit of depth to your card as well. All right. So this past weekend was my first weekend with both grandkids at the same time. And it was fun. It was a little more challenging having two. I kind of forget. You know, it's been a while since my kids were that close together in age, and you sort of forget how hard it can be sometimes. I have a deep sense of respect for the kids and what they are doing because, all right, that has run out. I'm just going to grab a spare one that I keep on hand. Just to finish this card off. You know, with everything they're trying to do and keep things put together and running. So it was fun. It was fun to be with them, but wow, I came home quite tired too, I have to admit. All right, I'm going to go ahead and quilt this card as well. So again, I'm going to use that same embossing folder. There is another embossing folder. It's called Dotted Circles. I don't own it yet, but it is literally circles of dots. That might be a kind of fun, kind of fun one to use for quilting too. I'll show that to you in just a second here. It would definitely be a different pattern, but with all those long arm quilting machines and stuff, it's probably possible. If you're a quilter, let me know. Maybe I'm just making it up. All right. Here we go. Get rid of all those layers, and then again I'm just going to take adhesive, and I apologize I ran out. I just don't want to take time to refill that snail right now, and we will add it to this layer. So two very different quilted cards. This is current paper, this is retired paper, but I really wanted to try to recreate the quilt panel that I saw with different pieces. So that is what I have to share with you tonight. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and joining me. If you're inspired to give this card a try, please make a note in the comments and share your picture when you've got your card finished. I truly believe that we can help inspire each other with our creativity and give people the courage maybe to do something out of their comfort zone, whether that is creating a card like this or giving a card that they've made for the first time. You know, any little thing, if we can encourage each other to do that, that's really what my goal is in this world. So take care, everybody. We will see you next week, and I appreciate you taking time to watch my video. Good night.